everyone, my name is Alan. I'm the lead developer of Soulstone Survivors.
Matheus, I'm the tech director. I'm new here, so you might not have seen me. I joined earlier this year, so I've been with the company for about 8 months or so, and yeah.
Yeah, and today we have a very special occasion, right? We got to the end of the year, we just celebrated 2 years of Soulstone Survivors, and we wanted to do a special sort of dev talk, where we talk about the future, so about the new game mode, about the new characters, even a little bit about Rogue Soulstone, which we haven't really talked about much ever, so this will be kind of new. And also do a little retrospective on everything that went on this year, the updates we've had, and what we learned from them, how we're using those learnings for the next few updates. What did we take from this year, right?
Yeah, so I've got my phone here. I'm not checking social media. I'm just checking the notes that we have because we've done a lot this year, and so we want to make sure we cover everything. So we've basically done 7 major updates and a bunch of smaller ones. We're mainly going to focus on the main ones, on the big ones, because we've had dozens and dozens of small quality of life fixes and things like this. So for the interest of time, we're going to keep it to only the major ones. So I guess the big one was A New Beginnings, right? Which was the update that had some mixed receptions, let's say. That was just before I joined. So I remember talking with you because I was already set to join the company. Alan and I know each other for 10 years or so, and we've been friends for a long time. And so we always discuss the game, but that I was set to join the company just a few weeks before that whole thing happened. And I remember you were very, not concerned, but trying to figure out what to do, how to handle the situation.
Yeah, so basically, Matheus was about to join and we were getting, the mixed reception. I was stressed, so I was thinking of, the guy's gonna join. The first thing he sees in the company is like this major crisis, right?
Yeah.
Or at least that's how it felt,
So it was very interesting from the outside perspective, because from the outside, I remember having conversations with you and I was like, well, if you really believe that the changes you've made are for the better, you should probably stick with it. But I just didn't realize how much of a strong reaction the update got, and how much the game is dictated by the community, because we make and now being in the company for many months, I can see that we make the best game that we can, but we take a lot from the community. We don't make the games for ourselves, right? The community is what matters. We're making the game for them. So from the outside, initially I was like, oh, you should just stay in the ground and believe in your vision, but obviously it's not as simple as that. So how did you in the end realize that it was better to revert or rework the changes? Why did you take that decision?
Yeah, I think that the first thing to consider is kind of why we even done a new beginning update, and it was probably to date the biggest update in the game. We revamped a lot of the skill types, a lot of the skills, a lot of the characters, the weapons, the rune system, so much, basically the whole game. And the reason we did it is, is this pursuit to do the best game we can. And we knew a lot of these decisions for these systems were made very early. We still didn't know the game too well. We were 2 people at the time, so it was hard to really measure what we would be able to do or not. And as we grew the team a little bit, as we got the amazing support from the community, we started to learn from the game, from what you guys wanted to see in the game, and what problems were arising. And so the new beginning was kind of, let's take a step back, let's properly rethink a few of these systems and how we could do them better, how we could actually, make a bigger distinction between the skill types and this and that. And we knew that it would involve a big rework, a lot of work, many months of work from basically the whole team. And, I imagine that a lot of other companies would probably not have done it at all. And, I don't know, maybe it's not a bad decision, but we still wanted to do the best possible, and so we went with it. And when we released, as most of you will remember, we had a lot of negative reviews. So then I must admit I was pretty stressed at the time because I didn't expect the reception. But then from reading the feedback, from listening to what you guys were actually saying, we decided to revert. We reworked a few of the changes. It was actually just a small part. It was mostly the experience changes and whatnot.
Yeah, because our game is very distinct from most other I'll call it competitors on the space, which is within 2 minutes things are pretty crazy in the match, right?
Yes,
it doesn't
yes,
take long before you have things are kicking off.
Yeah.
So is that why you wanted to change to make it more even across the match, as opposed to front heavy?
Yeah, to be honest, even to this day, we still get some feedback that are players that feel the beginning is too overwhelming because you level up fairly quick, you scale very quickly, right? In comparison to all other games, it's crazy quick. And so, that was one thing we were kind of trying to push back a little bit as well, so to distribute the curve of power a little bit, not linearly, but a little slower, at least in the beginning.
And that was the reason was because it was too overwhelming to some players, and so you wanted to.
Yeah. And another big part of pushback was one feedback that we still get as well, which is like how much you have to dodge from attacks, so because since you got so powerful so quickly, we have to make everything else powerful. So there is so many attacks, there's so many things going on that when you get to high curses, you guys know, you have to be dodging pretty much all the time, or otherwise you take damage. So we wanted to also bring that back a little bit and make it more manageable, especially in the beginning or not. So that's when the boss statues, for example, were introduced, because before they used to just spawn and start attacking immediately. So there were quite a few changes, some subtle, some not so subtle, to achieve this type of goal. So yeah, that's that.
I guess that's one of the lessons, to put it explicitly, which is we've made a game that people love, and we basically, that's what we got. So we can't, even though there are things that people complain about, like being too hectic or dodging too many red circles that you see all the time reviews on Steam, and we see those reviews and they're like, we know, but that's the game, right? If we change it, if to solve that problem, we're creating other problems that are actually worse. So we can't really do much about those reviews. We just have to accept that that's the game that we made, and that's it, right?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. This is, I think, the main thing I say when we're learning from the game. That's what it means. It's like, sure, there are different feedback. We know that the game will not be the best game for everyone, right? There is no way to do that. And what we've been learning is, sure, all right, cool. So we get a lot of feedback. We really pay attention to all the feedback we get. But how do we read in between the lines? How do we reconcile everything to actions that won't harm the players that really love the game, the way we also love the game, right? But maybe, improve the experience more in a global scale.
And that's a very interesting thing about early access, right? Because if the game hadn't been released, we could have realized, there's too many red, and changed the game. But because it didn't have a community or player base, nobody would have complained, which is a blessing. It's a double-edged sword, because the blessing is that we can just make whatever game we want.
Sure.
But the wrong side is we could have made the game for the worse, which was the case in this example.
Yeah.
And the community actually told us, look, this is not the game that we want. And so that's the benefit of early access, which at the same time can be seen as a detriment if what we just want to make is your vision, right? But now, as soon as you release, it's no longer your vision. It's a thing that you do with the community.
Sure. And to be honest, like when I think back of the new beginning, other than the stress, I think it was really positive, because you're absolutely right. But in the end, if I'm really honest, what we had to revert from a new beginning was very little. It was maybe a couple hours of work of things that I moved around, so the experience basically scaled back. But a lot of what was introduced in the new beginning is still in the game today, and I'm actually confident it made the game better. So now, the curses, for example, right? This whole dodging or not, this was a big concern for me, and I agree with the feedback that sometimes it's too much. I get why people feel that way. And we introduced it, so for the curses now you have optional curses, right? You have a smaller number that you need to get the same reward, so you can take those back. For example, you can make so the bosses are not spawn all at the same time, and you have this option without losing anything, right? Without losing any reward. So, I think that in the end, most of the changes were really positive, but if I'm honest, I think the one thing we learned that is the most important in our game is the player power, right? Is how you feel your power scaling and how you feel you're really destroying everything, and the rewarding feeling. And I think I didn't appreciate it that much before, like how important that was. Obviously it was important, obviously this was always the focus of the game, but it is really crucial. It's all that matters.
And it's an interesting thing because it's not something that you see. How do I put it? It's something that when you change it when you remove that, you're gonna hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, that was the wrong decision." But you can't know that beforehand. You can't know the extent to what this is important because nobody's saying this is really there's no 100,000 reviews saying this is the reason why I love this game.
Yeah.
But you would get 100,000 reviews if you remove it, of people saying, actually, this was the reason why I love the game.
Yeah.
But you only know that if after you change it. Right?
Yeah. And there is this other thing, right? And it's interesting as well, is that we get a lot of feedback, and if I'm honest, most of the feedback is really positive, right? If we look at the reviews, which is amazing, it's really cool. But what we're trying to fish even from the positive reviews is how to improve the game, right? So someone might say, "Oh, I love the game, I have a lot of fun, but there is this thing that I think could be better." And then we're looking for those things, right? For the most critical bits, because that's where we make the game better. I don't want to patting the back. I want to learn how to make the game better. But it's really hard to measure, how intensely something is important to players or not. And this is kind of the magic, as you said, blessing and curse of early access. Is you will never really know the answer to the question until you kind of try it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you try it, you learn.
Yeah. And it's tough, right? Because like you said, a lot of the update is still there. Yeah. So you have to take those swings, and you didn't completely miss it. It was like you sort of got it. Yeah. Well, you got most of it, but that one thing was wrong. So from the risks perspective, you took a big risk, and the payoff was pretty nice because most of the updates still there. Yeah. And if you were to be sort of afraid and say, I can't, the game is out, I can make this big of a change, the game will be worse today for it. Yeah. So you kind of get the best of both worlds because apart from the stress and the hair loss and the gray hair, but apart from that end, once you got through that stressful process, you have a game that is better and there's still more like what you wanted to make, and it's guided by the community and
Exactly, it's and I think that the other thing that was important, and not only important, but the stress, this is maybe a little bit of a me thing, but it was important, I think, that we acted quickly on the feedback. It's strange, I remember when we reverted the update, we immediately, as soon as I made the announcement, like, we're reverting the update to rework it because we're listening, and it was obviously true. Immediately, a lot of people came to me in direct message like, "Why did you revert the update? I love the update." And I was like, man. So, so for a while I was like thinking, did we do the right decision? Should I just wait longer so that the community will then, the players that are actually enjoying will make themselves heard and the reviews will bounce back or whatever? But the truth is, that is probably not the right way to think of it. If you already have a community like we have you guys, and you make changes, and then a part of this community, doesn't matter if it is 20% of the community, if 20% of the community is saying, I don't like this, can I just ignore 20% of people? And no, you have to try and find, maybe there is some solution that will be good for both. It's not that the solution is necessarily bad.
At least warrants investigation over.
Exactly.
Okay, so we got this feedback. Say 20% of the people really didn't like it.
Yeah.
You can either ignore it, or you can basically say, what can we do to actually, do what we wanted to do, but also make this 20% like the change, right?
Yeah.
But there is a line, right? If it was 1% of people,
sure, yeah,
you probably would.
Yeah, then
so
it's
very hard because you don't know what the line is. And I guess another thing that for you guys, the community, will be when we make a change and you really like it, make yourself heard as well, because then we can know, a lot of people hated it, but a lot of people liked it. And when you make yourself know, it's not to be like, to counter the negative reviews. It's mostly to know what is it that people really liked about it and what is it that people really hated. Because maybe they're two separate things, and we can keep the things that people really liked and remove the things that people didn't like. If they're the same thing, then then it's pretty tough.
And it happens, But the dodging is one of the things, right? We get feedback saying it's negative. We get feedback saying, I enjoy the channel, enjoy how it is.
And you see some players on. We sometimes get saves from players to fix a bug or something. We go on a match with the player's character, and it's like, if you get one hit, you die. And they're like, how can players even play this? We can play it ourselves, but some players are really just incredibly skilled at the game.
Exactly.
Okay, so is there anything else on the New Beginnings that you want to discuss? Because I think that was the main lesson.
I think that was the main gist of it. Is just, I think that the main thing take away from us as a company is, it's important to not be afraid to work on the game if we think it can be better. At the same time, it's important to really understand what players want, which is very hard to do. But I think that the whole process, as hard as it was probably the biggest learning we had from the game since the beginning. And I'm sure that the game is a lot better today thanks to that process, and thanks to the negative feedback we managed to make it better. So I think that, as you said, if there was no early access,
not only the game, but we are better developers and game designers for it.
Absolutely.
Which means that future games are also going to be better. Now, there is something that I want to ask. I don't think we ever discussed this, but would you change anything on the approach to the update? So if you were to do a big update like this in the future, would you perhaps have shown to more players? Because I do think you showed to some players on Discord, right? Or
we always, I don't know if everyone knows, but we always do, we have 2 rounds of testing. We have the closed testing, which is a smaller number of players, which we show the game to get early bugs or not. Then we made the alpha testing, which is public, and we invite everyone. It's mostly on Discord, we send a message. And we did that. The problem is not a lot of people participate in the alpha, so maybe it was also failure of not getting more people in. But honestly, I don't know, because there is, I think, the other problem is it's hard to do everything by committee, right? So it is really tough to find a balance between what is being said and what is being meant, and
I guess that point is more about how early you show it, right? Because if you show it too early, then you're not showing something that is complete or that is worked out, all the kinks are worked out, and so the community might come in and try to change it too much before it's done, right? But once the update is done, So it's like, okay, this is what we're about to release to everybody.
Yeah.
Would you have perhaps in the future, would you then show to more players, try to get at least whatever 20,000 people to play the game, to play such a big update before you release it, or would you say that the approach is the way that you handled it was good enough? It's just inevitable that something like that would happen.
Honestly, nowadays I think we'll talk a little bit about the other updates. So for example, the Unholy Cathedral, which is the next step where we use some of these learnings. I don't know. I don't think I would change anything. I think that the main thing I would really consider is there is this crazy statistical thing where, you know, if you show it to like at least for our game, you know, if you show it to 100 people,
That's
and
representative.
it's representative of 1,000,000 people. It's crazy, but it is. You know, it's as long as you pay attention to the feedback. So yeah, we'll talk more about this. But you know, when you show something to someone, if you don't feel the enthusiasm you were expecting, and it's not that the feedback is negative. It's just they were like, ah, cool.
Yeah. This did happen recently.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on the notes here for us to talk about, but we can perhaps talk about it in a future video or something. But this did happen, and I guess we'll discuss when we discuss it. So the next point here is performance and stability, which we've spent a lot of time in the last 8 months, like months of work.
Yeah, months.
Not to mention whatever happened before. So to start with this, there was a few things in here. It's mostly focused on the things that we've done since I joined 8 months from now. But right when the game released on early access, right after that, you did a lot of changes as well, right? You made a lot of changes to improve the performance of the game. Were those mainly things that were like because you made the game in such a tight time scale because you had a day job and all of this? Were those fixes mainly like, oh, I programmed this in such a naive way that it was just a slow there, it would never be fast enough? Was that the case? Because what we've done recently is much more like, oh, this was already, it was already pretty good, and we had to do major reworks to actually make it work fast, right? It was on a local, the best local maximum, but we needed to take a completely different approach. Would that be a good characterization?
Yeah, to some extent. I think that honestly the main thing is indeed the game was made very quickly before early access, and during the demo period we didn't have Endless, right? So Endless actually came into the game 2 days before release, literally on the weekend I was working on it before release. And the first version of Endless was very different from what we have today, by the way, and it got today it's insane. Jeez, it was too crazy. So Endless change initially, the main pushback on Endless was actually performance. It was like it's impossible to handle this. Doesn't matter if it's the best code in the world, we wouldn't be able to handle this. But in a way, I think that since we were developing the demo, which is where we made most of the decisions, if I'm honest, in terms of how the skill system works, how the movement, how this and that. So the core systems of the game were already in place for the demo, right? So how we detect collisions, blah, 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 right? And those were made in a way that in the scale of the demo, it ran super quick, right? The game would run easily at 60 FPS in pretty much any machine up until that point, right? Yeah. But then we started introducing more things, and then Endless, and then this and that, and then you start to really push the boundaries of what is possible, So I think that the base code was fast enough for most games, but not for our game.
I guess this comes from our background, as we used to make games for mobile devices back in. You were making 2012 or whatever.
So almost 15 years ago.
So we always had to make.
Performance was always.
As far as Unity game development is concerned. Unity, there's only so much you can do, but We already were pulling up all tips and tricks we could ever do
Yeah.
to make the game run fast on
Yeah.
old mobile devices, should not spend all the battery and all this stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess with that experience, the code was already in a pretty good state, right?
Yeah.
And then just because of the sheer scale of how
Yeah.
many calculations and projectiles and rigid bodies and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And so recently we had to do a lot of things that are very unconventional, I'd say, for
Yeah.
Unity development.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, yeah. I would say that to that extent, as Matheus said, he joined about 8 months ago, and Matheus is a really experienced developer, much better than me. And at the time, I felt that the game was in a state that I knew things could be faster, but it was really hard to know how. And honestly, some of the biggest wins we got recently weren't even possible with the previous
Yeah.
version of Unity. It's something that Unity introduced, and we can now use it. So
It would be possible, but we will have to do the work that
yeah,
Unity did. We have to do it
we
ourselves.
would need to basically redo the physics engine
Yeah.
entirely. So yeah, there was, I think that I was happy with how fast the code was. I knew it was a problem, but solving it was too much of a task, let's put it this way, with the team we had. So, having the expertise Matheus brought really made a difference in terms of making these extra steps that are really, non-conventional for Unity.
Yeah. There's a lot of low-level code that we need to. I don't want this to get too technical, but
Yeah.
a lot of things that you that are not for the games industry. If you work in AAA or C+ or on a C++ code base, I worked on AAA and as a graphics engineer and all this stuff. So they're not groundbreaking stuff, but for people that only work in C# and Unity, they're very out of the box. They're like
Yeah.
using pointers and low-level memory management and data structures that are not commonly used, things like this.
Yeah.
To push that to another level, because and we can only do so much because the game gets incredibly insane. The amount of multicast that you can do in critical damage and all these sorts of things, and chain skills and and companions it's insane.
Yeah, you can scale crazy in all directions. Yeah.
You would have to build an engine yourself with an incredibly performant code base from the start to even get this game to run at 60 FPS on a low-end machine.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the only way to make it if you know how many things are happening, right? So there's only so much we can do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think we've got to a point where we've made enough improvements where performance is no longer the main one of the main points on the negative reviews.
Yeah.
Because it used to be on the negative
Yeah.
reviews all the time and see
Yeah.
people complaining about performance, which is no longer the case.
Yeah, no, the games we've made are, honestly, I'm still a bit blown away by what we managed. Not because we're geniuses, just how much those changes actually had an impact into the performance. It's insane to think about how much faster the game is. And we got an update coming that will touch on projectiles or not. Actually, now I just remember this video is coming out after the update, I think. So yeah, the last update changed a lot the projectiles. So you guys will probably feel another big difference in terms of this performance. And it's just crazy to think how much the game is handling. Like, I remember when we started on this journey, so when Matheus joined, he would ask me, okay, how many skills are casted and how many this or that? And I was like, honestly, I don't know. It's so much, but one number, I don't know. So I started to run some tests and, get some late game builds. And we shared this in our devlog. So, at first, say you got void and you got to a very high level endless, you still can have up to 500,000 enemies being hit every second. In 1 second you have to process 500,000 contact points for physics and calculate, was this a critical strikes, how many, the armor, the fragility, the So it is so much that goes into it. It's
a lot.
insane.
Yeah, I remember when I joined, because one of the things in engineering they have to know is what are we trying to handle here? Because if you're trying to handle 500,000 calculations, your thinking is a lot different, right? Because if you're trying to handle 50,000, then there's some things that you can do that will work, and then you can move on to something else, make improvements on another area. But if you need to handle 500,000, then it tells you, well, actually, even this architecture that we're using to calculate collisions or whatever, it's just not gonna. We need to change the entire approach, and we did that for some things like the XP crystals rendering, like the abnormal effects, how we manage that collection. And you yourself have done a lot of. I also want to say that a lot of it is just using the new systems that Unity put in place. So it's not like I came in and was like, wrote an entire new. There's nothing like that. A lot of it is just like, Unity now allows us to do physics detection, collision detection in a multi-threaded way.
Yeah.
So we're leveraging that, which changes a lot of the architecture of the game. But Unity does a lot of the heavy lifting of multi-threading everything. Because essentially, if you're gonna break that game on a single thread, you just can't. There's just enough.
Impossible.
There's no CPU out there that can do that kind of calculation. So you need to spread across.
Yeah.
Well, if it could. Sorry, it could if you had a custom engine that you did from scratch to be the most performant thing ever. But in Unity, you can't do it in one thread.
Yeah.
So in C# and all of this. So.
Yeah. I think if we are to talk about what we learned and would we do it differently, right? If we knew from today, let's start a new game that we know it's Soulstone Survivors. Would we have done anything different, and what do we learn from the process? Honestly, I would say no, because to get the game to where it was being released, it was so quick, we wouldn't have the time.
In the commercial environment that we were talking about, we wouldn't change anything because the trade-offs that we made were perfect.
Yeah.
If you were to take that commercial environment out of it, if you didn't have a day job, if you weren't make a game to put on the Steam Next Fest to get the players, if you had all the time in the world, then the equation is much different. But no, there's no point talking in those terms because it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's pointless. Yeah. So what you're saying is that the trade-offs that we've made were pretty good.
Yeah, I would say, that the main thing is first focus on making the game as good as it can be, as fun as it can be. Focus on the experience, how you detect collisions. The player doesn't need to know that. The player doesn't know that. So it matters that you detect it and cause the damage, So,
a fun game that runs at 30 FPS perhaps is better than a game that is not fun but runs at 120.
Exactly.
And then you can improving the performance later is sometimes not really possible, but most times is possible. But making the game more fun is a lot harder. Yeah. Because game design is a lot harder than engineering.
It's a lot more subjective, right? Yeah. Engineering is like you look at the time.
Number go down, good.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I think, and learning is for the future. Now we have done these systems, we have done these optimizations, we have more experience with how to take Unity and make it multi-threaded here and there, and how to do certain things that we know will be problematic. So for the next game, this will be a lot easier. We will have a very different context from what we had originally. So I expect us to have less problems with this sort of stuff. But I would still focus on fast interaction, getting the game done as quickly as possible, and learning from the game as soon as possible.
So basically, bear with us because the next game might be slow for a little while. And another thing that I should say is that I said that you're working on Projectile, and you said that I was doing. But the team is the entire team is heavily involved. We're talking about ourselves here, but perhaps it goes without saying that the entire team, we have very talented people that
absolutely.
It's spread across them, so it's not like we're the only ones that do it.
And to be honest, this goes back to a point I mentioned earlier. Like when we started, we were basically the two of us. Now we're not the two of us.
You and Alex.
Me and Alex. So it's not the case anymore, and this allows us to think differently. So now we rely on the amazing team we have, amazing people we have, to really be more ambitious. So these steps are more ambitious than what we had before. The game has so many things that we would not have done if it were just me and Alex. We would not be able to do all this. So yeah, goes without saying. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
We're all critical for the game to be what it is.
I think that's it for performance by the notes here. Oh, the save system. It says
Oh
it.
yeah. I put the save system there because I don't know if all of you remember, but for the longest time we had a save system that actually did one backup and one main file. And every now and then, it wasn't super common, but common enough to bother me that some players will lose progress, because this is the worst possible bug to have,
Yeah.
right? It's like, and I understand, guys.
Yeah, 20 hours of their life.
Yeah, it's so, it is, I felt terrible whenever anyone would come to me like, hey man, we lost pros or not. So, people sometimes would be mad, and I was like, I really apologize, because I understand, I would be mad as hell as well. So we actually remade the save system right before I joined, to be honest. So this was also, I think, came in the new beginning, if I remember correctly, to have like this 10 backup system, and it cycles the saves and blah blah blah. And this was all thinking of how to make it more reliable and whatnot, because to be honest, it's just a file in your computer. So if the power goes out, we don't have anything we can do about that.
Or Windows antivirus thinks the thing, whatever.
Yeah.
There's on a PC, there's any number of things that can happen to the file, right?
Yeah, so there is no way for it to be entirely reliable. So, you have to do backups, you have to try and work around these limitations. And the latest system we've worked on, that is one thing that I regret not doing earlier. I regret not doing it first 2 months of the demo, because more people were affected by this than I would have liked. And these days we still sometimes get people having this problem. It is very rare today, and we're still trying to make it more reliable.
We still haven't figured out what the hell happened in that case. Just some unauthorized access or something.
Yeah.
So we believe now that it's something to do with antivirus that is blocking the file.
Yeah.
But we don't really know what to do about it, to be honest.
Yeah. But
so we're trying to figure out. So we have a ticket open. Every so often I put it in some engineers and they go and take a look and they're like, I can figure, and then, again, and we still trying, but eventually we'll figure out what it is. Yeah. So the next topic then is content expansion. So we did 7 big updates, 5 of which had new characters. Some of them are, I think most of them were very well received, but some of them are pretty interesting. Like the pirate is a really cool one. We introduced quite a few things that are bespoke, like they have special animations when they come into the game, and the ascensions change the lighting of the scene. Yeah. And the pirate in particular has the big ship that moves around. That's super cool. And they're a ton of work. Right? Yeah. But luckily, because of the system, the engineering side of them are not particularly challenging, because we are, thanks to the architecture of the system, they're relatively simple to create new skills. We still have to write code, but the main part is really for the designers. Yeah. Right? So we spend a lot of work. I wanted to ask you if you have any insights on, for a known designer, it's pretty difficult to think, what is even that you guys do when you're designing the character? Like, what is it that you're thinking when you're designing these skills? Is it about the synergy with other skills? Is it the synergy with runes? Is it to be different than other characters, to be complementary? How do you approach designing a character?
Yeah, I think that, to some extent, all of that, right? It's first, how do we get some new gameplay that feels refreshing in comparison to others, But at the same time, how does it synergize with everything that is already in the game? So characters share skill types with other characters, so they share some skills, but not all skills. So how the skills from this character would maybe be good with the stuff that is already in the game and other characters. So it is actually very challenging, I would say, because we're at a point where we have 350 more skills in the game. We have 19 characters right now, so quite a few. So it's starting to be harder and harder to find the gaps. How can we innovate? And there are a lot of limitations. So you don't control your character, you don't choose when skills go off. This is the biggest limitation, to be honest, in terms of design, because so many skills we think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you do this? But then you think, oh yeah, but this will be casted 100 times per second. So no, it wouldn't be cool. And so there are a lot of limitations, a lot of challenges, and the main thing is how to make something that feels different but it still plays well with everything. I think this is where we spend most of the time. It's just brainstorming a lot of ideas of maybe new effects, maybe it's new behaviors of how a projectile moves, maybe it is how it causes damage. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
So that's where the bulk of the because I know that you guys have a meeting where you do the rough design of the thing of what is it going to be about, what is the theme, what kind of skills it's going to cast, and then after that a lot of it is just testing, right? Playing the game and seeing how it plays out. So how do you test a new character, for example? Do you test, and this is an honest question, I'm not just asking rhetorical, I don't know the answer to these things because I'm in the engineering side and we have plenty to do, so I don't really know how that works too well, but I imagine it's incredibly difficult because you have to design every new match. You start with nothing.
Yeah.
From skills and everything, right? And then you can go to a endless 20 or whatever where there's everything is up. How do you design something that work well in both cases?
Yeah, to be honest, that's also really hard. Honestly, we usually don't focus too much on the high endless because at that point. Reality starts to not make sense anymore.
Like a singularity, where it's like, well, what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that some skills will scale better than others. We kind of accept that fact. It is what it is. What we have shifted with these 5 new characters that came this year, and also to give a little bit more context. So the other 14, they were since the beginning of the game. So the 14 characters were made in the time to release the demo, and that included making the game as well. Yeah. So and that was basically a little less than 6 months. So very quickly.
That just goes to show how much more effort we put.
Exactly.
Because the team is bigger. It's not because we didn't want to put that. The team is bigger now. We can afford. More time on each character.
Exactly.
Which, a little bit of a tangent, it feels like we should redo the game again. Because if you look at the newest character, they're so much more polished and in all aspects compared to the barbarians.
Yeah, no, they really are. Honestly, I think the barbarians, since the new beginning, you see, new beginning here making an appearance, is actually a very interesting character because most of the skill types were redesigned with New Beginning were natural to the barbarian already, so like swings and thrust and blah blah. But I agree, it's like we had more time to put into these characters, and the focus that we shift a little bit was, I think that the game, if I'm honest, already covers all sorts of fantasies, let's put it this way. You want to be a summoner with 1,000,000 skeletons? You got it. You want to slash everything to death? You want to spin twin? You got it. You want? Yes.
I even see some Broken's video this other day where he had a mini series there where he was like, oh, only summoners. Only summons builds. So they was like, oh, let's make I think we changed that Ascension now, but the Roman, I forget the name of it, but the Roman,
Legionary.
Just the Legionary with all the catapults or whatever it is. And, so that kind of fantasy that you're talking about, right? It's like, I want to be this and I want to make this build.
So I think that the game already supports a lot and play styles, and if you like dot builds, if you like direct damage, there is stuff for everything. So now we've been focusing a lot more on the theme of the character, on the fans of this character. So it's not as much about the gameplay of the character, but how do I sell the idea? So the pirate with the ghost ship, you know, when we started talking about the pirate, the cursed captain, it was, you know, the first idea was, man, wouldn't it be cool if we got like this ghost ship coming along and it's firing bombs on? And we thought, yeah, cool, yeah, that would be cool, but how the hell will we get this into the game and not clog your screen and, you know, make it strong enough that it's meaningful, but not on your screen all the time, but visible. We don't want it to be a ghost ship that you'll never see.
And I remember we spent a lot of time on this, like many days, even weeks of like tweaking the animation pattern so that you see that, because you don't want to just spawn the big ship and then it just sort of disappears for a while. So you wanted to show in the screen every once in a while, and then because it's so big, you don't want it on the screen all the time. And we had talks about maybe chomping the sails so that it's shorter, or scaling it like that. It's very interesting because when you're in the inside, so many permutations of changes were made to come up with what we see, what the players see in there, right? A lot of effort goes into changing all of that.
But, you know, again, I think that if we go back to like what we learned with the process is, I think there is one key moment that for me really changed the switch in my head. It's like we were making the engineer, we made the character, we're happy, we're testing, we thought it was really cool. We were already with this sort of mentality of selling the theme of the character, right? So it's all about weapons and, you know, mass destruction and machine guns and all, and
I think I know where you're going,
And then there is one skill, which is the portable nuke. And, you know, as a skill, it is the simplest skill in the game. It is literally, I remember, it was the second skill I made ever. So it's so simple. It's like a bomb that does this, boom. You know, it is what it is. But it sells a theme, you know, it sells an idea to the player that, you know, man, you know, it's not a bomb that does boom. No, it's an atomic bomb. You see the
basically, it's not. There is a big aspect of it, which is the underlying gameplay, but the fluff on top, the whole like fantasy, the visual effects, the theme of it. It's huge.
Important.
I think we underestimated that. In the past, of how important that is, because you think, well, you know, perhaps it's the same skill as the other one, so it doesn't. Why we need to try to make it different? But really, like a lot of it is
that's the idea you're
presentation
selling,
of it.
And you know, I think that you know, a lot of game designers, there is a lot of talk about this, that when you're prototyping a game, you know, do it quickly, use white boxes. We call white boxing, right? You just get placeholder assets and just do your stuff, make sure it's good, it's fun, because if it's fun to play with a box, it will be fun with whatever it is. And that is definitely true. I definitely see the wisdom in that, but it's not the complete story, you know. The visuals and the idea, the thing is the idea you're trying to sell, and how you sell that is as important as the mechanic, you know. You think of think of Warhammer, you know. Warhammer, the game can be good, can be bad, whatever, you know, there are so many Warhammer games out there, but the fantasy that is being sold is very convincing, right? To whatever it's trying to sell, it's selling. You know, it's like the testosterone is brutal. That part wouldn't be possible with white boxes, you know, that's not sold with white boxes, so.
And it's sort of, it's complementary, right? Because if it sucks on the gray box, it's not gonna, the presentation is not gonna save it. But if it's good on the gray box and the presentation sucks, it's really not as good as it can be. So you need both sides, and that's one of when I used to try to design games. You know, when I was just starting out and trying to make small games, that was one of the things that I struggled the most, because I don't have that vision of, oh, I know the gameplay is here, but then it's missing this new thing, and then it's gonna be good. I don't have I can never see, oh, then it's good if you do this. You know. I either see it out the final thing and know it's good, but in the process I can never see it being
Yeah.
very good, which is a skill that game designers have
Yeah.
of like, oh, I know this is good, it just needs a little tweak or just needs a presentation or like the VFX is gonna fix,
Yeah.
which is, or the sound effects is also huge,
Oh yeah. Well,
a
makes
huge aspect, and we
difference,
have
yeah.
a fantastic
Oh, yeah.
audio director.
Yeah. No, sometimes I feel a little bit bad for Gun, the art director, because he's such a talent guy. He does everything, right? It's this one guy that does all the sound for everything, the soundtracks, he composes everything. So he's extremely good. But the game gets to a point where there's so much that you stop listening. It becomes crazy. But if you pay attention, if the game was a bit slower, you would actually see how much goes into each little thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that the last thing I want to say about this point on content expansion, and the main reason I actually got it there, is that the first year of the game saw a big increase into meta progression.
Yeah,
for
that's
the
what I
game.
was gonna mention now because it's in the notes.
Yeah. So it's like the first year we got the character skill trees, we got the ascensions, which weren't planned. The character skills weren't planned either. We got so many things because of the feedback of the players.
Artifact weapons.
Those came this year. So, but it was a big moment for expansion in terms of things for you to get, to unlock, to get into the game. Then the new beginning came, and this is when we reworked some of the original systems, like we mentioned before, and then we were happy with most of these systems. Then this year came and now went, right? And this year we've done a lot of performance stuff. I would say, if not half, a bit, very close to half of our work has been in performance for this year. But we got the new characters in, and now we're starting to do more and more about the last part of the game, let's put it away, which is the bosses, the maps. We just made the content sneak peek as well, so there is a lot coming in that sense. So I guess what I'm trying to say is really that the way we decided to do the game is really in these stages. It was like get the core as good as possible, so that included give you something to do, give you something to really crave for, so the skill trees, the power, and getting better and better, and how the game gives you this progress. Then make whatever was there as solid as possible with the new beginning, so the skills and revamping this and that, and making sure that all that works well. And make sure everything technically works well. Does it run in our computer? Can you actually run the builds? And this wasn't true until, so just today I was looking at a video that Faden sent of him testing, sorry, it wasn't Faden this specific video, but testing Storm of Arrows in the new update and how it actually runs in crazy scenarios. And I was happy, because we're thinking, finally, so many skills will be actually possible to use in end-game scenarios. So, make all that, which we consider like the core of the game, the core experience, make that as good as possible, and then finally we're expanding to the other side of things, so game modes, bosses, challenges, content, gameplay content for you to explore.
And it's a trade-off, right? Because if you focus on one thing, you neglect the other, and there's no right answer to the order of things that the order in which you need to make things.
Yeah, to be honest, I would say that probably what most companies do, and maybe it is the smarter decision, is to focus on the flashy stuff. The flashy stuff is gameplay content, right? It's like, sure, I know the game is kind of broken, but here's a new expansion, here's a new map, here's a new whatever. And I think that this, maybe from an external perspective, might give a good idea for the players that, wow, there is so much new stuff. But the core is still maybe wonky.
Yeah, and we understand why they do it.
Yeah.
Right, it's not like you're saying, they're just dumb. It's like there's a reason for them to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a very tempting reason.
Yeah.
But we I don't know. Can we afford not to do that? Is that a wise decision?
I don't know. What
is it a principle?
wise.
I guess my question is it a principle decision? Does it come from principles of like this is what I think is best, or is it from our why did you decide to do it that way? Why do you think the other side of it is not as wise?
Yeah, I would say yes, it is a principal decision, because I don't know, maybe it's me, but it really bothers me to see some of the problems of the game that I know we can fix. I know we know how to fix. Then we would just leave it there, and I'll add 10 new bosses and 20 new maps, but I know that the core issues are there and players will continue having issues with, oh, but the skills are kind of all the same, and so it would look good on the Steam page, but it is not the type of thing I wanted to do. And the other thing is, if you go that way, which I understand is probably smart from a business decision, it's probably better. But if you go that way, you have another challenge, which is if we had done all that and then we went back and redone the core and whatever, we would have all of this to rethink again. We would have a million bosses to think of.
If you had to redesign anything structural, all of that work has to be redone. Yeah. And that's probably why that work never gets redone.
Yeah, exactly.
Because now you've done this many content that have to be reworked if you were to fix that core issue.
Yeah.
But you can't fix that core issue because you have to redo all of this stuff.
Yeah. And honestly, we had to do some of that, right? So just with this latest update with the projectiles change I mentioned, there were like 130 skills, 200 types of projectiles we had to rework.
And some of them are not small reworks. Like they have to redo the visual effects, the particle systems, and
one by one. Magic.
There's not click a button and make it. We even thought about, can we write a script that will convert from the particle system to the VFX graph, which is what we're using now, but there will be just nearly impossible.
Work,
so we just had to manually redo it. And
it is a lot of work already, but I wouldn't change the path we did. I think that focus on the core was important.
Yeah, I think that's it for content expansion. And then the next big topic here is the new game mode, the Unholy Cathedral, which
the first new game mode, right?
First new game mode, yes. Yeah. After the first new game mode, and I remember that. I think that was in development before I joined, and it took a long time even after.
Yeah.
Because, and when you say this, it's easy for perhaps for people to think, oh, it doesn't look that complicated. Mm-hmm. And if I were to say build this, that's not that complicated, and it wouldn't take that much time.
Yeah.
But we didn't build that. We built 30 versions of it.
Yeah.
Many different iterations of design, and there was even some last minute changes that we had to make because of player feedback.
Yeah.
So how do you want to approach that? Because that one is a big,
I think that the interesting part about the Unholy Cathedral is it was the first new content where we took the learnings from the new beginning and started putting them into action. So it was in development for a long time. As Matheus mentioned, we tried a lot of different things, and obviously, we need to be happy with it first, right? We need to have confidence, show the players that this is good, right? We don't want to do a crappy game mode and passes, didn't like it, of course, So we are the first filter, and internally that was the first limitation, right? So went back and forth quite a lot, and the plan changed, and we had different focuses, and it was done kind of in the side, so it was a bit weird. Then when we finally got to what it was actually going to be, which is close to what it is now, but it's not exactly, then we focused the development, we started again, we took the learnings from the characters, from the new beginnings, and we're like, look, it's not about the mechanics, about the themes. What we're selling here is like, what is the idea? Does this look cool? And the first interaction didn't. It was basically the same game. It wasn't too different mechanically, but there was no new map. There was no new boss. It was just the mechanics of the skills and blah. So, alright, then we put a lot of effort into the theme and making it look good and feel different from the rest. And, we were focusing on the whole process of making the build, right? Because to us, the game, this is one of the core pillars of the games. How do we support more builds? How do we support the play style or not? But the normal game, once you have your skills, you're basically evolving your build, right? But the build is not changing a lot. And we thought, so many skills end up not getting used because, they don't fit into the meta or this or that. So how do we incentivize players to actually try different things? Maybe they will discover new builds that they didn't know were good.
So that was basically the problem that the game was trying to solve, right? It's like, how do we get players to change, to permutate the different hundreds of skills that we have?
Exactly, yeah, because that is part of the fun, right? It's the discovery of what is really good. And so this was kind of the problem we're trying to solve. And then we made the first version, we got it to the closed testers, and I was really confident, I must say. Like I really liked how it was. But the moment we showed is what we just said. The reception was like, hey, it's cool. And I was like,
I remember this distinctively because I remember I think he said something to the effect of like, I'm gonna just get the feedback and just stuff. I'm not even gonna try to launch this. I know what's coming.
Yeah.
Because of the new beginnings. It's really one of those card issues that are so deep that you didn't even consider.
No.
As soon as you saw the feedback, you're like, nah, this needs reworking.
Yeah, and I mean, we're again talking about a small sample of players, right? It was not even 20 players. So even though the sample was really, really small, you can already tell that this scales, So sure, well, why are they not more excited about this than they should? Than I thought they would, not should, but I thought they would. And then it was about whatever time it takes, we will listen, we will adjust our plans, we'll do whatever, but we will not release this until we're confident that the majority of players not the majority, that there is no drastically negative sentiment, and some of it actually remained. And the problem was, again, the player power that we mentioned with the new beginning. The Unholy Cathedral plays with that, right? We revert your power back to the beginning. We reset your skills, we banish all your skills, so you have to try different build. And this is kind of necessary to kind of force you to try different things, but not everyone enjoys it, because hey, you're taking away my power to make me try. I don't want to try new stuff. I want to do the killing.
Do you wanna explain what was because there was a subtle difference, wasn't it? It wasn't a massive change that we had to make, right? What was there before and what is there now? Before you got the feedback, because the difference is not major, but if people are interested in game design, I think that is very interesting.
Yeah.
How that changed and solved most of the criticism.
Yeah. So the first version, the one that we present to the closed tester was basically you would finish a cycle of the Unholy Cathedral. We would reset your skills just like it is now, and then you had to make a new build. The description is literally the same. What changed was when you reset the cycle, to give you 6 skill points immediately, so you can rebuild your build from the beginning. It takes 1 second to just choose your skills again and make the build very quickly. It's because the problem was the beginning of each cycle. the beginning of each cycle felt like a slog, because you had one skill and then you had two skills and
Especially coming after the high of the end of the previous cycle, where everything was going crazy,
yeah.
and then it's just suddenly lost.
Suddenly it's slow again.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's just my god, and then the boss is there from the beginning, don't do any damage, and so it was all about figuring out how to solve the feeling of slowness that the beginning of each cycle was giving, right? And so the first thing was adding the 6 skill points, and that already sped up the game a lot. And that we were honestly pretty happy with that at that time, because it really did make the game a lot faster, a lot more interesting. And then someone suggested, I think it was actually Daddy the Grande, one of the community members, and I believe it was him that suggested, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have like a power up or something you get between cycles, so you have some sense of overarching progression from beginning to end of the Cathedral? And when he said that, I was like, oh my god, why didn't we think of this before? It's obviously a good idea. And that's when we introduced this sort of unique power-ups you get in the Unholy Cathedral when you finish a cycle. And they're really powerful, but it is to give you a sense that you accomplished something, here's something. They have this different mechanic of like sacrifice because of the corruption of the boss, but
you meant, and I remember a lot of these changes came very quickly, which is to my point of like, when you know what you need to do, a lot of these things don't take a lot of time. Oftentimes, the engineering part is not the hard part. The engineering part is the easy part. Most of the time, in fact, with the kind of games that we make anyway. The design part is ridiculously difficult.
Yeah, because that's the thing about when we say about processing the feedback, right? The power-ups for each cycle, that was honestly a direct suggestion, so that was very clear, but the feeling wasn't, the feeling that the players were having was like, oh, I don't know, I'm not feeling it, and so someone tells you I'm not feeling it,
it's not very actionable, is it? The only action that you can take of it is this needs reworking.
Exactly.
But it doesn't tell you
when.
anything about what you need to change.
Yeah.
It just tells you something needs changing, and then it's your job as the designer, which is a very difficult job. To come up.
You keep, probing, you ask, thankfully we have this amazing community that we can go to and ask, we can say, look, can you give me more details, and oftentimes I think as a player, you don't really know what is possible and what isn't. So it's hard for you also to give feedback, because you don't know what the team can or can't do, when, where, how. So it's not your job to design the game, but as soon as you start to understand that the player is unhappy because the reason why they're unhappy, then you start formulate the solutions. There are players that will make suggestions, and sometimes it's not feasible, right? It is something I know will be a problem, but even in those cases, I can kind of get sure. So if he's suggesting this, that means he thinks this is a problem, but maybe to fix this problem, there is another solution that is different from what he suggested.
You don't necessarily do what they suggest, but you get it and say, oh, that suggestion implies this, and then you come up with a solution that
So
fits the game.
That goes back to the point we also mentioned before of how even in the positive feedback, we're always looking for these hints, because you as the player, you don't know what is important for us, and that's how it works, right? And it's not a critic or anything, it's just how it is. It is really our job to read and interpret really between the lines, what is this feeling that is coming up. Why?
And that is really a designer's job. It's not even a game developer's job, because I sometimes suggest something that you're like, oh, but because of that other thing, this wouldn't work, or because I don't have the entire game. Maybe if I play for 3,000 hours or something, like some players play Dota for 5, maybe they can do it, but unless you're the game designer or you play thousands of hours of the game.
Yeah.
You don't know all the intricacies of the impacts of the changes.
Yeah.
And so your job is basically get the feedback and
Yeah.
read between the lines and try to
Yeah.
figure out how to
Yeah.
solve those problems.
And frankly, there is quite a lot to the game, right? In terms of skills, rooms, and this and that. So the way things interact really require big context, right? So it is.
Yeah.
It is just
Difficult job being a game designer. I can tell you this much. Much easier being an engineer. Yeah, so I think that's mainly that's all of the points that we wanted to talk about about this past year, the learnings, and how we're gonna apply it to the future. Now we should talk about the future because it's been 2 years actually since we since you released the game, you and Alex, but since we've been working on it. 2 years and a month and 7 days or something to be exact.
Yeah.
And there's still quite a few things to develop and to release, which we are very excited about. We put a lot of effort into it, and hopefully be well received. But we just released the roadmap. If people, you can go on the Steam page and the community tab and see the roadmap. Or actually, in the actual Steam page is also there, right?
Yeah.
So we have new characters and weapons coming. So still 3 to go.
Yeah.
Have we talked about what they are going to be? All of them, or
no?
Not
yet. No.
Oh, so I should be careful.
We already know what they are, but we haven't really made it public. No.
Including some top requests. From players.
Yeah.
So.
We're saving the best for last. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
So
it says here like really focusing on the team and the things that we learned actually from this year, right?
Yeah.
The fantasy part of it, the presentation part of it.
Yeah, I think we talked quite a bit about this, but I just wanted to kind of make clear that, we're taking all those learnings from previous characters, previous features, for the weapons themselves. There are the legendary weapons coming as well, which is another big thing. We'll complete the 5 skill types for each character. There are artifact powers coming for the remaining weapons, and all of these learnings of strong theme, really honing into gameplay mechanics of how the character works. So you can expect, I can tell you now that 2 of the 3 new characters that are still coming, they have very strong gameplay focus in different areas. I won't go into details, but we're really taking everything and trying to make them as interesting as possible, and strong theme or not, and I think it really shows in how they're developing, internally.
Hopefully the last one is the best one, right?
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things we should just, when we're done, we should redo the game from scratch because it's gonna be, it would have been so much better. The next one will. I got lost. Are we talking about the new game mode yet?
Yes. So.
Because it all blend. It all obviously is all related to each other.
Yeah. So because Matheus has the notes.
Yeah. Because I keep scrolling up and down, but I lost the scroll here. Maybe this will get. We'll see in the edit if this will make the edit.
Yeah, but basically, now we're in the section of the video of, let's talk about what we learn, how we're putting the learnings into practice, right?
Because we're making new game mode that's been announced already.
Yeah.
But people don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna announce it here, are we?
I wanted to talk a bit about it. More.
But are we gonna say what the game was? Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, a little bit. So I won't talk about everything, but I know that this is why some of you guys are here. So, the new characters, new weapons, blah. This is all old news, for some of you. It's coming. We're doing it. Kind of what to expect. But what is the new game mode, right? So for this new game mode. Again, we're trying to take the learnings from New Beginnings, from the Unholy Cathedral, and we're developing it with player power as the #1 driving motivator for this game mode. So it is all about how you build your power over gameplay, So we already reviewed I think by the time this video comes out, we made 2 content reviews. The first one was a new boss, a new map. The second one also a new boss, a new map. But we didn't really talk a lot about what does all that mean.
Yeah.
You know, there's no context for that. So let me give you a little bit of context for that. So this new game mode, the whole idea is to try and really show to you that there is a universe out there. There's a world where everything is happening. You know, there is more to the game than just, it's not random maps. There is some logic to the madness, you know. So we want to first really sell the idea that there is a world out there, that things are connected, and it is about how you explore this world and go through different regions and different places, and you face these really titanic bosses that you find throughout the world, and how they represent different cultures, different biomes, different people, and through doing that, you start to learn more about the game. So you will find secrets, you will find new interactions that I won't go into the details, but you know, you find new things that you do. And most important, you know, when you face titanic bosses, you need titanic rewards, right? So you start to get really a new pool, new ways to get exclusive power-ups that really shape your build. These power-ups are something we had designed actually a while ago, and they have very specific usability, so they make some builds a lot better, you know. So it is all about really fine-tuning the builds into something that you can't do today, you know. So we're trying to add a new layer of power that you can explore, and all this through the lenses of exploring the world and these ancient powers and getting those for yourself, all in the goal of finding. Sorry, I'm measuring my words because I don't know how much I want to explore right
yeah,
now.
because the more you say, the harder it is to change things. Or
Yeah,
it's a
exactly,
tough line to
yeah.
walk.
Yeah, so that's why we were usually a bit obtuse about what we're talking about, is because everything we say is kind of a commitment, but this much I know, it's like you get these new power-ups, you explore this world, you discover these new secrets, these new areas, and it really elevates your character to a level that wasn't possible before. And all of this has an ending, a maximum goal that is out there somewhere, and the truth is out there somewhere, is what I will say. So, you know.
And the mechanics of it are maps and bosses, right? There's gonna be some interesting maps which are already released on the sneak peek. People could see some pretty different maps than what we have now. Is it similar enough in terms of gameplay, but very much more interesting?
Yeah.
And the bosses, which are super cool, and we don't have enough of those. Like this is a boss fight. You know?
Yeah.
Like this is it. Like we don't have enough of those. We have in the Unholy Cathedral, but not really much else.
We have a couple secret ones.
Yeah.
So you know, what I can say is, you know, we're playing on what we know the game does well. You know, we're playing on how you build your character. We're bringing more meaningful bosses to the game, meaningful challenges that really feel different from each other, and they have different loot tables, so you get different stuff from them. But we're also focusing a lot on the choice, you know, so it's not just RNG completely, you leave it to chance, you know, because that's also something we learn a lot throughout early access. So there will be ways in which you can kind of control where you go to and what you face and what you get as a reward for it, but then, you know, that might come at a cost. So it's all about really offering variety of gameplay, you know, of really taking everything we built so far and making that more interesting just because it gives you more context for those builds, you know. So it is it is really what I would say the culmination of what Soulstone Survivors should be. You know,
And the boss fights, would they be very sophisticated in the uh, in how you play them, or are they because the you know?
yeah, one thing we actually talked about in our previous devlog briefly is that, you know, as you might have seen from the videos, there is an actual boss room now, you know, right? And this was always, I'm a big fan of huge boss fights, you know. I'm a long time WoW player, you know, so I love that sort of stuff, and they do it really well. But one challenge we always had is the boss room, because if the boss is out in the wild and you can just run away, you know, it's hard to redesign skills that make use of positioning and smart mechanics. So, you know, for the Unholy Cathedral, we do have a boss room, so we can play with skills that control where you are in the arena, and then I know you will be here, so I know how I can offer you some challenge. And so this is why for this new game mode we made a choice, very deliberate choice, to have boss rooms and to have one specific boss that lives in a map, and this guy is like the culmination of everything you kind of see in the map. And he also uses his room as the arena, right? So what happens there couldn't help happen in an open world, whatever.
And you've got to have that control. Otherwise, there's something that you simply cannot do.
Yeah.
Very interesting gameplay that you can.
Yeah.
But that is a little bit of other. It's not unprecedented because we have the secret bosses are somewhat similar to that, and also the Unholy Cathedral.
Yeah.
You said that the current bosses are almost big elite enemies.
Oh yeah.
Which is what I asked about, like how sophisticated the battles will be, because the bosses now do feel like they just have a big health bar.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but it's not really.
Yeah.
It's not really a boss, you know. They're quite cool, but they're not.
Yeah. But this is something else that kind of happened. You know, at first they actually were kind of bossy, but as you got stronger, as the skill trees give you more and more power, as this and that, as the rooms, as the skills, they became less and less important. And then with the curses, you can have multiple of them, and that makes them even less important. And then we cannot make them honestly too hard because of everything that is there already. So you already have curses that enable 4 bosses at once. So if they are each one individually impossible bosses, when you get 4, the game is impossible.
Yeah, now that you mention it, you can kind of see how they were at one point much more impactful, because some of them, I just started to think about it now, but some of them even have like an attack where they keep holding, trying to connect a ray onto you to cause them onto you, which is a very distinct attack from anything else, which is a very bossy like attack.
Yeah.
But that comes back to the whole thing about the boss room.
Yes.
Because that's in the arena, is much less impactful than if your movement was restricted in some way.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you know, we tried, to be honest, we tried a lot. So for the existing bosses, most of them have global attacks, because we're thinking, look, the guy might be
anywhere.
2 kilometers from the boss. It's like,
especially some characters walk a lot faster than other characters. Some of them have 3 dashes, all the stuff.
Exactly. So you know, the movement range is huge. The room is ridiculously large for a boss fight. And so we tried. We made a few skills that are global. We tried to, you know, when we started having multiple bosses at once, we thought about stuff like the Medusa has this ray that goes the whole map. You know, it's infinite. And that was thinking, sure, she's vulnerable while she's doing it, but the other bosses aren't. So she's kind of limiting your movement now. You cannot easily get across the ray, you know. So there were some zoning mechanics we tried to think of in this huge map, but it's honestly impossible. You know, we would need to resort to some sort of actual wall, whatever it may be, that restricts you, so we can make the skills less hits the whole world. You know,
Yeah.
it's just
Especially with the movement range being so large between
Yeah.
different characters,
Yeah.
right? It's very difficult to, unless you spawn a different boss. You can fake it in this ball. This boss spawns when this character is on, but the different ball are different skills.
yeah.
But yeah, it says new power ups, but no pool dilution.
Right, yeah, that's an actually important point because when we introduce, I don't even remember, maybe it was the new beginning as well. I think it was. We introduced a lot of new power ups, and some I actually cut back at the time because honestly they were too hard to balance. There was just no way to get them in place. But some of them we actually cut back because we noticed that for you to get the skills you wanted, it was harder because there were more things for you to get. And this goes back to the point of control over your build, I think in a roguelike game, it is healthy to have some RNG. I do honestly quite enjoy it. I think it is a little bit about make do with whatever you get, but it cannot be too much about that. So we got to a point with the power-ups where people were feeling that sure there are like whatever many power-ups, but I can never find the one thing I want. I want chain from this to that, but I never get it because it's always something else.
And we kind of already have things like the rerolls and you can lock skills and things like that
even
to help.
then. Yeah,
To
even
help with
then.
that, but even then it's still a concern.
Exactly. And so for this new game mode, when we talk about new power-ups and whatnot, I know that some of you will be concerned, here we go again, like we'll get more power-ups and the pool and I will never get what I want. But I think we're kind of being quite smart with it because the pool dilution happens when everything is in the same pool, right? So when you level up, you get a pool of power-ups, but here the bosses will have different loot tables. So the bosses will have a small pool of power-ups and you kind of decide which boss you will find. So it gives you a way to really expand upon your build in a way that you want to. It gives you still control, gives you new ways to expand your player, but not at the sacrifice of the old ways.
Yeah. But how do you see that being received? I guess be careful because whatever you say here, people will be able to look back and say, oh, they thought it would be fantastic, and everybody hated it. So
yeah, I hope you guys like it. Yeah, because I'm talking here
but
about.
Do you foresee any sort of divisiveness, or do you think it will be a slam dunk? Just it will be great because from our conversations, it seems like it's the essence of the game, and really, if you love Soulstone Survivors, we believe that you're gonna love this.
Yeah.
Which is different than in the past, right? In the other cases.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess in the other cases, the main thing that I, to some extent, didn't foresee and then learned to foresee a little bit was that we were kind of trying to change the game a little bit. It was like about, I want you to make different builds. I want you to try different things. I want you to, that is the main thing really. The new beginnings was I want to slow you down a little bit because of performance of everything else. But this time around, there is not that factor. It is really, you want power, you want to kill stuff, you want to feel cool doing it. So
there you go.
I'll give you that. So that's why I'm fairly confident, that people will enjoy it. But what I do foresee is possibly a point of contention, and we will play test, we'll get some more feedback. This is still something that is only internally, so we haven't shown even to the closed play testers, which is maybe the bosses. There will be some tuning there, if it is too complicated, maybe it is too complicated, maybe it retracts from the feeling of power that the player has, right? So, but at the same time, the easier it is, the less powerful you feel. So there is a sweet spot to find, so there are challenges to be had with this game mode. It is very ambitious. like the team is probably wanting to kill me as how ambitious it is. We're a bit megalomaniac about it, but I think that this is part of what will make this cool. You know, it is since we want to give you this feeling of a cohesive world of, you know, the regions connect together, and you know you can see in the scenario, and you can see in the enemies and in the boss and in the power-ups that you are in this place.
That's a push that we're gonna do next year as well, to make the game feel less arcadey.
Yeah.
Less like just go and, you know, like a arcade machine in a pub or something.
Yeah.
It's like it's a much more,
Yeah.
because there is a lot more behind
Yeah.
whatever or the enemies are all of it, right? There's always something behind. It just doesn't show through the game yet. Again, because of the trade-offs, so we prefer to focus on the other things first.
Yeah.
But getting to a point where we're gonna sort of connect everything.
Yeah.
And this game mode is gonna help with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this is, you know, this is the one bit I haven't talked much because, you know, who knows. But yes, we've been internally for months now been making a big push towards showing more of what the world is in the game, you know, because right now you can, and we're perfectly fine with that, just to be clear, you know, if you just want to get in and play and have a good time, that's amazing, right?
Yeah, the game is not gonna change fundamentally.
Yeah, but you know, so when we say about we want to bring some more context, some more lore in a way, you know, some more feeling of a world, this will never really get in the way of you just playing the game, right? So this is really important for us, it's critical, but at the same time, there is a world behind, you know, there are so many ideas of how the things interact together. It's just that the game doesn't show it, and we feel that it's worth for it, you know, it doesn't really sell itself as this world right now. It feels like, sure, it's cool, I'm killing the guys, but you know, whatever.
It's another aspect of the thing that we talked already about, the nuke example with the engineer, right? So the presentation of it, how you present the same thing but presented in a different way, has a different feel to it. It feels more polished, feels more interesting, more more fun. And we just need to show it. That
Exactly.
way change the presentation a little bit. So
you know, I think a lot of it also comes down to purpose. You know, what is your purpose? Why are you killing everything? You know, and this is the sort of thing that if you don't want to know and you just want to kill stuff, sure, that's good as well. But some people do want to know. You know, why am I doing this? And this actually changes how you interact with the whole game and the decisions you make, and you know, trying to achieve something that is greater than completing this sculpture. You know.
So there's a few things up our sleeve that we are not quite ready to talk about yet, but they're all coming up. Most of them are coming up pretty soon.
Oh yeah.
You have anything to comment on that, or it really is just like, well?
Yeah, no, I think we talked enough
Yeah.
about.
We even said some things that you weren't planning on. So just a lot of things coming up. We were working really hard on. Hopefully the community will like. So do you want to talk about Rogue? We get a lot of comments about Rogue Soulstone. Even on the dev talk that on the post that we did today on Steam, there was people mentioning how this might be like a little bit like Rogue. So what's the deal with Rogue? How, like, it's been a long time since we shared any official news. What's going on there?
You know, today I didn't want to go too deep into Rogue, but I did want to remind you all that this definitely, you know, not only in our radar, but we have very ambitious plans for Rogue, and this is kind of why we haven't said much, because it's all so much in flow right now. There are so many things being decided, being tested, you know, it's just a long process, but we are super excited to get it out to you. It's just gonna take a little bit more, you know, we're really focusing on getting the last details of Soulstone Survivors, on getting to 1.0, and there will be support after that as well. So, you know, there is a lot to plan around and not a lot to develop. And we will never be comfortable with sacrificing quality of one to do the other. So, this is why we've been quiet about it. We don't want to commit to something we won't be able to deliver later or anything like that. But know that it is coming, and I think it will be really, really cool. But
yeah, it's one of those things, right? That we're incredibly excited to work on it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could, we almost would just release Soulstone now and do it, but that's not quite true because we love Soulstone so much.
Yeah.
And we think it's a fantastic game, and it deserves, especially if you think that the amount of people that bought the game and that played, and the incredible community that we have that have dozens, hundreds of our medium play time is enormous.
Yeah.
So there's more people that play 15 plus hours of the game than there are,
Yeah.
And when you think about those people, they just deserve, our full attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. This kind of goes back to who we want to be as developers. I think I talked a little bit about this somewhere, but I feel that as a company, when you start a game company, there are so many ways you can do things, right? Possibly for us, if we were to think about money and be just, let's make as much money as possible, it would probably have been smarter to release Soulstone Survivors a year ago. Just stick to the roadmap and finish it, and it's done. Whatever. Let's do the next one, and by now maybe we would be releasing another game. But that's not who we want to be. I'm honestly feel so grateful about Soulstone Survivors, and so proud of how it shaped up over time with your feedback, with really this interaction. We met so many amazing people thanks to this game. So I just couldn't do it. I couldn't really just do whatever is the best business decision. No, I think that the best decision is making the best game we can. It's the one we are able to live with ourselves. We need to.
And it's not just a moral ground, although it is, to some extent, but it's also like we are thinking very long term. We're thinking that gamesmithing will be here 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, right?
Yeah.
We want this to be the last job we have.
Yeah.
And so we need to think about creating a community that likes our games and that trust we as developers.
Yeah.
So there's also that aspect to it.
Sure. Yeah.
It is, but we talk to people, to some business people, and they're always confused. Like, you can release the game now. Like, what are you? What's going on? Like.
Yeah. Why haven't you released yet? Like, look at all this stuff you guys have in the game.
Yeah. But anyway, enough patting ourselves on the back.
Yeah.
We're great people. We're gonna be. We're gonna be.
Yeah, but it is what it is.
It's just to say that we love the game and we want to release it in the best state as possible.
Yeah.
To reach as many players as possible, but also as a sign of respect to the players that bought the game when it wasn't that big. There wasn't a lot of things, and gave time out of their life.
Oh yeah.
And I joined 8 months ago, and I was blown away when I started going on Discord and seeing the reviews and trying to help players with problems, and just blown away by how amazing the community is. They just ask for something. They're happy to test things for you. They're happy to. Or you ask, where were you when this crash happened, and they give you as much detail as possible. It's fantastic. It really gives you a sense of like gratitude towards the.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it might sound, cheesy or cliche, but we really appreciate you guys. It makes all the difference in the world. Like, the game really wouldn't be what it is today without you guys. And I don't mean from the sales perspective, really the feedback perspective. It's just the communication, it's being close, it's getting the messages, it's being on Discord, on Steam, on the forums, it really builds something different in our heads, really, like of how and what we're trying to build, And
especially when we came, we're both Brazilians. started from very humble beginnings back in Brazil, and we worked together. We're in 2016 releasing mobile games, and the dream was to have maybe 10,000 people play or 20,000 people play.
Yeah.
And then you'll see Soulstone survivors, and daily we have 1,000 people playing. It's just incredible. It's so humbling to see.
Oh yeah, no, it is, and you know, and that's the thing that from day one, you know, again, I'm hammering the same point, but it feels like I owe it to the players to do my absolute best. You know, it is like I know how lucky I am to have this opportunity to make this game, to have all of you guys with us. You know, how many games are out there, and you guys are playing our game. You know?
Yeah, when you think about like, you have so much entertainment out there, not only in video games but in music, cinema, TV, and you choose to spend time playing the thing that we make.
Yeah.
And we take that with the utmost respect.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Utmost, like, we are incredibly grateful that people spend their, not only their hard-earned cash, but time out of their life to play this game. And
so that's why there is such this strong feeling of trying to do the best game we can. You know, it's not just from the just words. We actually feel this into our cores. You know, it is. You know, I'm happy with the team we've built. I know that everyone in our team feels the same way. We can see it, so it is, you know, it is really an honor to be making this game, and I'm really happy of the journey so far, and really excited about what's coming next.
That's the spirit of the holidays, isn't it?
Yeah, you know.
What a fantastic year we've had, and hopefully next year will be even better, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully, and I guess that's it.
That's it, pretty much. I think
This
that's enough.
Sorry guys. This probably was more than you could handle for us.
But it's like a podcast, 3-hour podcast. So if you made it this far,
oh my
thank
God,
you. All 5 of you.
Yes. No, it's been really an honor, guys. We wish you happy holidays. You know, we thank you so much for being with us for this journey of early access. We will keep listening. We'll soon share more stuff. You know, the company will go on a break now during Christmas and New Year's. But if you need any help, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll still be looking. We'll still try to help as best we can. And next year, there is so much coming. I'm excited. I want to get there. You know, I feel like I want to jump in time to show you guys all this stuff we're working on. So thank you so much. It's been amazing. The year has been really cool having all of you with us. And we'll see you in the next one.
See you later.
Bye bye.